Welcome to Public Comment. I'm John Dunbar, former mayor of Yountville.
And I'm Alfredo Pedroza, a farmer.
And I'm Derek Bromley, owner of Ohm Coffee Roasters and co-founder, lead guitarist for Mama Said.
Thanks for joining us as we talk about politics, people, music, coffee, and whatever else Derek wants to.
What song is playing right now, John?
I'm sure it's going to be The Needle from Mama Said.
Love that song.
Is 3 cups of coffee too much in one day?
I think people might know the truck more than they know the retail space.
Coffee actually is more than twice as complex as wine.
And somewhere between the beans and a cup, something happens.
The last 20 feet of delivery is everything.
John, I'm thirsty. I'm throwing you off.
I know. We also have an extra glass, which we're going to get into later. But
no, why is it
We're going to
empty?
find out. We're going to find out. But before that, welcome, Derek. Thank you for joining us. And I like to start with, unless Alfredo takes over, to learn a little bit of your background and what got you here in Napa. And I know you've had a lot of different roles in your career. So just tell us briefly some of that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been in Napa since, what was that, 2001? I first moved here. Lifer in the food and wine business, as it were. Had my first job as a busboy in the 11th grade, earning a little after school dollars. Kind of like the idea of not having to be at work till 4:30 in the afternoon instead of
We
9
should
in the
do
morning.
that. People should go to work more.
At 4:30 in the afternoon?
Yeah,
Right.
it teaches life skills.
That's right.
But I was, great exposure to the beverage, fine food and beverage industry as the local Italian restaurant. Ended up taking that from, and I initially thought I was going to like fly jets and be, pilot of some form. But ended up in the hospitality business. Took a year off between high school and college, worked in New York City, applied and got into the Cornell Hotel School and started a career that way.
That's
Fancy.
interesting because I think we've talked to a lot of folks and some have been hoteliers, but I'm remembering the conversation we had with Mario, John, about he knew he wanted to do this. And I guess for you, the question, Derek, when you went, from high school and you had this job, did that spark an interest in you though? Like to say, hey, I want to do this when I grow up or
For sure. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there was something in the guest experience and like the difference between an epic guest experience versus just an okay. And it's like, the food probably is going to be similarly good across both of those experiences, but it's those little touch points and details that make all the difference.
See, I think that's so fascinating because I think a lot of the people growing up, young people growing up, they're so consumed with wanting to know what they want to do or having these high-tech jobs, but it's like, there's rewarding things you can do. And sometimes you just got to take the first step and it leads into career. So that's why I was kind of interested, Derek, in how that happened for you. But that's pretty cool.
Well, we also talked to Lee Hudson about his calling is what he was describing is loving to grow things and started out not in grapes, but in other horticulture. And so hearing you having a passion for hospitality and service is also really interesting because it's one of those things that you don't necessarily know it's going to be a lifelong passion when you first commit to it.
That's a great point.
And then you just continue to evolve and you've put many layers on top of that. I know.
For sure. I didn't know exactly what it was back then, but I knew there was something that was in the hunt. There was something in the mix there.
So you were in New York City and eventually you found your way to the Napa Valley. Was
sure
it
did,
that
yeah.
direct from New York to Napa or?
Well, so Cornell Hotel School, 4 years. My dad was living in New York, so New York was sort of my home base in between on breaks and whatnot. I worked there for, I guess it was about 5 years after college. Worked for a guy by the name of Drew Neporan, who was a great restaurateur, also a Cornell Hotel grad. But I was at Nobu, Tribeca Grill, Montmarché. I trained under Daniel Jonas and Tim Kopek at Montmarché. So one of the great Burgundy wine lists in the country at the time. And
it's a great resume. It's a great resume.
Two of the great Soms/wine directors that, this was the days before you had to have your advanced or your master's credential to really progress in the wine world. But you had to do your tutelage under somebody that really knew what they were doing. And the two of them were just amazing to learn under.
Is that what drove you, whether it be literal or figurative, to Napa Valley? Was hospitality? Was it? Were you into the wine?
It was
part
Napa
of it all
Valley
before
wine,
that?
John. Who else doesn't want to try Napa Cap? Come on.
Of course it was Napa Valley.
Yes,
of course it was the
John.
wine.
Yes.
Yeah.
But actually, I took one more step before I got there. So I was working as a som, and actually I ended up leaving that to start a business back in, I call it the Web 1.0 days. But, the first .com boom back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
My college roommate and I landed on an idea that basically became a business-to-business exchange for wine, beer, and spirits. So we created a platform where wholesale distributors would list their wine, beer, and spirits. Restaurants and retailers would go onto the platform to research and buy and make their purchases, have it automatically parse out to the different distributors. Suppliers, wineries and spirits and beer folks would advertise on the platform as well.
Kind of like what people do with the bulk market today.
Yeah. But a B2B industry exchange platform was what we were calling it at the time.
Well, it's a rather volatile platform right now
Right.
around the world. I wonder how many people really locally here know that part of your background, because I think they more often know that you've been a som with wine and then the evolution not only into music but also into coffee. So you still are barely in Napa Valley with your story, but tell us a little bit more about when you got here decades ago and you're still here. So you found your home, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I think that, the Bev Access thing, that was the exchange that I founded. We raised a couple rounds of VC. We were worth a lot of money on paper at one point, when the boom, before it became the bust. But, I talk about that as my on-the-job MBA. I was a 20-something kid sitting on a board of directors with people 2 and 3 times my age and, figuring it out and learning by fire. But one of the great things I got out of that, I'd been at what they call the retail tier of the business as a som. I got a really close exposure at the wholesale tier of the wine industry. That's a whole rabbit hole we could go down into about how distribution works in the U.S.
It's messed
I think
up.
before we continue, being a som, we need to at least toast
give
a
a
little
cheers,
bit.
huh?
Cheers.
What's in the glass here?
Yeah,
This is Erickson and Caravan, the Oakville cab.
Awesome.
I will tell you, I'm very surprised because I came here prepared to talk about coffee. And I didn't know the extent of your background.
That's why we have these conversations.
I'm learning, John. I'm just giving you a perspective of what our listeners are thinking right now, John. But I'm fascinated by that. But enough of the wine, because I think we've talked about wine and we're drinking wine. I'm curious about coffee.
Yeah.
So how did you transition to coffee?
Yeah, sure. So I made my way out to Napa.
Yeah.
I had all this background, worked at the retail tier, worked really closely at the wholesale tier. I felt like I needed experience at the supplier tier of the business to really be well-rounded.
Yeah.
Be able to be a general manager, etc.
On your mind at this point.
Still wine on my mind.
Yeah.
I got moved out here by LVMH to launch Domaine Shandong's still wine program back in 2001. That was about 15 years of various and sundry small and large winery gigs. But I got to this point in my career where it's sort of like, where do I go next? I was the CMO at the Hess Collection at the time. I ran all their US marketing for the various brands and tasting rooms, et cetera. And, I had gotten this exposure to coffee back in the early 2000s. It was a company called Blue Bottle that's super famous worldwide now.
Retail in San Francisco. That's where I tasted it. Yeah.
And all over the world now. You can get them in Tokyo. You can get them anywhere, just about. They were bought by Nestle a few years back and, just blew up.
Wow.
But, my first taste of a Blue Bottle cappuccino back in 2004, 2005 was my first experience of that upper tier of coffee. And it was there's like aha moment where the skies parted. At the time, I was working for a small Russian River estate called Linmar, selling $100 bottles of Pinot Noir. And that was the first time I had a sip of coffee. And I was like, oh, there's this $100 tier of coffee as well, where there's all this complexity and nuance and things that are happening with it.
Interesting.
Up until that point, I had just been like hunting and poking around at the Starbucks or wherever it was, trying to find the right mix of milk and coffee and all of that put together into something delicious.
So how important was it that you had your palate experience through wine, that you were able to transfer that to coffee? Is that something that gave you kind of a rapid start to understand the nuances of coffee?
Totally.
Because you had that palate experience.
That's the common thread. That's what got me into coffee, because each of those steps along the way, starting with, there's that $100 tier equivalent, at every step I took down into the coffee rabbit hole, it was like, oh, this thing in coffee is like this thing over in wine. And it short circuited and fast tracked me
But it's
into the world of
interesting
coffee.
though, right? Because now I'm curious, you got, as a farmer, John, I'm thinking about the whole supply chain, right? And right now, I think we're just privy to the taste of coffee, the retail component, the distribution. But clearly there's so much more from where you procure it to that side of the equation, Derek. And I don't think folks really understand that. So I'm curious truly of how does that work in terms of the bean sourcing is there premier top A sites like there is in grape growing? And is there a B and C?
Right. Yeah. So there is a supply chain, just like with wine. It is way more complex and fragmented with coffee than with wine. I don't know what the number is, but the number of grape growers in the world, viticulturists, tens of thousands, maybe 10, 20, 30,000. I don't know what the number is, maybe 100,000. In coffee, you're in the millions easily. Because a coffee farm could be a family's backyard, 20 by 20 foot parcel with a dozen or two trees on it, where the fruit is harvested and taken to the local washing station, blended in with the neighbor's fruit as well, up into these bigger and bigger batches that ultimately make their way to market.
So how does that now? Again, I'm super curious now. So say I have a farm and I'm growing it. How do I get that to market? So is there like a middleman, like a custom crush facility equivalent that you bring your coffee, your beans to, and then they package it and sell it? Or is it individualized, like customized lots?
It varies a lot. It varies also a lot by quality. So, you have the big mass produced, machine harvested, just like with wine.
Where it goes Central to Valley. Starbucks. That's the Starbucks. I can
or
say
the equivalent of bulk. Is that what you're?
Or more to like Folgers, Maxwell House. There's that tier as well, right? Which is
massive
volume. It's like wine from Sonoma.
Ouch.
I could say.
But also, you have your own roastery here in Napa.
I do.
You're sourcing from around the world. I know because Jerry and I are subscribers to Ohm Coffee and we get it delivered regularly to our home. And if we run out, I just go down to Browns Valley Market and get it because they have them there. But you are sourcing from around the world, and we'll try to avoid getting too far into tariffs and the pain of that. But how do you identify out of all these sources, the ones that you have chosen?
That's a great question.
And then I also know that you have these. I mean, the names are fun because they're all related to music, and Ohm itself is related to music, but you have so many options. How is it that you figure out these are the dozen or so that you want?
But let's drink, John. I feel like we got to call. That's a
If
great question.
we had any of his coffee, we could taste it and talk about it.
If only, right?
Yeah. You just got to be direct, John.
But wait.
Look at that.
Wait.
There.
Now
it's
not
talking.
hot, but we've got some coffee here.
I'm in.
And we have an extra set of glasses too, don't we?
Shockingly, John. I'm so
amazing.
I'm so prepared.
I just put them out here just in case.
Of course.
Let's get the crack.
John, you didn't do the sound effect, John.
I let it do the work.
No. Ooh, look at that. All right.
So we're pouring my flash brew coffee into a wine glass here.
Is there a reason?
There's a few reasons for this. One of which is
and
coffee.
You short poured yourself. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
There's more where that came from.
Yes.
I'll be watching these glasses.
Yes.
But I've had a fair amount of caffeine so far this morning, so I got to modulate. So coffee actually is more than twice as complex as wine in terms of the number of flavor and aroma compounds that are in this glass here. The wine folks hate me for saying that, but wine, we're getting complexity through fermentation, through oak aging. Coffee, we're getting the complexity primarily through cooking. We're roasting these beans. We're doing all kinds of caramelization, Maillard reaction. There are all these complexing reactions that are happening. And then my job, once I've done all of that, is to preserve the bean in its freshest possible form for preparation.
So what does that look like?
Consumption.
So like in wine, Derek, we kind of get it, right? You harvest the grapes, you put them through a sorter, it takes the stems away, puts the berries, and then they get dumped in a tank. You put pressure on them, you add stuff. So people are very exposed to the way people make wine. with coffee, let me tell you, and I drink it a lot, but here's what I know is you have beans.
Right.
And somewhere between the beans and a cup, something happens.
Yeah.
Right. That's magical.
You can go to Ohm and have
I know, but we should talk about
an
that
experience where you learn about that.
So I would like a short cliff note of what is that process like? Because I think there's a ton of people that drink coffee that have no fucking idea what the process is.
Yeah. The original bean, pre-roasting, post-roasting, how you are identifying the nuanced flavors and how they differ. I mean, if the process is identical, but the beans themselves are what is different. If you could just
so the quick version,
explain.
Coffee is it's one of the few commodities in the world where we're after the seed at the center of the fruit. We're not after the fruit itself or the skin. The seed is sort of the commodity that everybody's after.
We have more props.
So there's another prop here. I'm pulling out some green unroasted coffee beans. They look like little pebbles. They're kind of a pale olive drab. They look like miniature coffee beans. They're smaller as well.
I'm going to hold them up so Caleb can see them.
They've been dried. And so there are a couple of different ways of processing coffee so that we get to that point. Basically, you have to separate the seed from the fruit. There's something called a natural process.
Is that a machine type?
So the other process is machine in the beginning. Natural process would be, think of Amarone. It's like sun-dried on raised beds. So there's like a fermentation that happens. The fruit kind of raisins. And in that fermentation, there's sugars that are pulled
That's
into
interesting.
the seed.
Yeah, when we were in Italy, they would do that with the grape and just put it in racks.
Yep.
Which is very interesting. It led to a different type of wine profile that I just didn't appreciate.
Don't like raisins in your wine.
I might have said that to them.
It didn't taste like Napa Cabernet.
I didn't get invited back, John. It might have been a reason.
So the natural process is one way. The other way is there's a mechanical depulping of that fruit in the beginning. The seeds then end up in these water canals where anything that floats to the surface gets skimmed off because that's bad. And then that goes to a point where it's then fermented and dried on raised beds. At either way, what we're after is these dried, think of like a dried black bean or pinto bean. It's about 10, 12% moisture. In this form, coffee can travel all over the world from the equatorial regions where it's grown. It's good for about a year. This is roughly a 12, maybe 15, 18 month shelf life.
So by the time you get it, typically, is it in this form already? Or
yes. Yep. This is what I'm buying. And the way I source is, so I'm not big enough yet that I can go to Origin and cut deals directly with farmers. So I have importers here in the US that I work with. They send me.
What I did not realize is the transportation happens pre-roasting across all levels of whether it's 1 million tons or not. This is to preserve the freshness, basically. Is that?
Yeah, to get it in a form where it can travel all over the world.
Yeah, because if you were shipping post-roasting, it would just expire by the time you got it, basically.
Yeah. Wow. The best part of the coffee would happen somewhere in the middle of the ocean. Or if even then, maybe on the way to the ocean.
So then you take that and make it into
So I get
the jewels that they are.
I work with a group of importers here in the US. There's dozens and dozens of them. I work with a small handful that are sourcing in that tea. I think of my coffee as the equivalent of Napa Valley fruit to the broader wine industry. So I'm sourcing like the top 2 to 5% of coffee beans that are grown in the world.
And how do you, how would you know that they're the top of the top? Is it because you've tried them before, or is it you're relying on your importers?
Well, so I'm working with importers that specialize in that tier of coffee. Then they're sending me
pre-selected.
And you also know if they're following through on what they're presenting, and if they're not, you're not going to work with them again.
Yeah, and actually, so another similarity with the wine business is coffee has a 100-point grading scale as well. So in the wine world, it's very subjective. You've got, a spectator 95 is different from a wine enthusiast, different from a Parker. In the coffee world, it's very objective. So the 100 points is built up 10 points for each of 10 different attributes. The idea is that my 85-point score should be within half a point or a point of my importers, of the exporters, all the way back to origin, back to the grower. So what that gives us is a common language so that when I go to
consistency.
So when I go to my importer and say, I need an 86 point, here are the few tasting notes, this kind of acid profile, elevation, density, we're able to very quickly get to a small number of samples for me to try.
Not that I want to go back to wine, but it's so interesting because that's part of the issue that I think the wine industry is facing is it's hard to say, you know, if you're sourcing fruit and you typically associate quality with price, but necessarily hasn't been that it's been farmed to the best standards, that it's producing the best wine. And then you have this ranking system of wine, which necessarily doesn't align with the farming practices.
Right.
And that's super confusing.
And somewhat by chance.
Yeah. So that's why I love the way coffee, because then it's a common standard in predictability.
But I think to add to that, it's the whole AVA system that we have with wine, which is there is an assumption that you can always get a level of quality based on the AVA.
Well, there's one AVA that's better than all.
Of course. And
we wouldn't happen to be sitting in the middle.
It wouldn't happen to be Atlas Peak or anything.
John, you're a great man.
But not everything from Atlas Peak is premier.
Right.
And not everything from any other destination. And what I'm hearing you say is you can, in fact, count on the consistency if you're sourcing from Ethiopia or Brazil or wherever else. You know what you're getting, and it's not a chance. And also, you can't make mediocre beans better,
right?
With what you do to it.
I can definitely screw up really good beans.
Yeah, but that's also true about a winemaker, that if you do things badly, the best fruit's not going to be good wine.
Yep.
So
for sure.
I just think it's fascinating how coffee was able to create that benchmark, and people stick to it, even with new entrants in the
and being global.
Yeah,
also.
and being the amount of money, right? The amount of money that's in the coffee industry, yet it hasn't been challenged and it's accepted. I think that's awesome, right?
How is that regulated? Is it
in
countries do it? The industry does
standard,
the quality grading.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically if an importer is sending me samples that they're saying are 85 and I'm scoring them at 82, then we've got a problem, right?
So it's between.
There's sort of a common language and there's such a thing as the equivalent of a master som or a master of wine. We have that in coffee too. There's a Q grader that is calibrated and tested and has to pass these super rigorous exams to be able to blind identify. Wow. In Ethiopia or a defect in a coffee.
Another one of those jobs that AI cannot take over. You need to have a human palate for that.
Wow.
Sensory evaluation.
I shouldn't say that because eventually at some point,
somebody's
going to probably figure that part out too.
Meta only laid off 8,000 people, John.
Yeah.
People aren't losing their jobs.
But we're progressing. So you're now you're ready to roast.
Yep.
You have your roastery.
I've worked with my importers. I found the right beans. In the specialty coffee world where I work, basically we're talking about 80 points plus. So the big, massive, I'm not going to say big green giant or anything like that, but the big, massive folks, they're hovering somewhere around the 80-point average.
Got it.
Score. My blends typically are somewhere in the 83 to 86, 87 point range. Once you get much above that, you very quickly start going into the stratosphere of like auction lots, and start thinking like tens, hundreds of dollars per pound.
Is that what John drinks? Is that what you drink, John?
Yeah.
I haven't slipped any of those in your nose yet.
John.
But like the concept of a $40 or $50 cup of coffee, we don't really have that concept here in the US.
Is there people that actually have that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So a lot of that coffee is being consumed in the Far East, Middle East.
Wow. Enough said.
90 plus point coffees a lot of those will end up at auction, and there's just exorbitantly high prices that will be paid.
Wow.
So that's a fraction of a percent of the market.
So like on the retail side though, right? So you have a coffee shop in town. What has that been like, right? Just in terms of being in downtown Napa, Derek, you're seeing more foot traffic. You went through were you there during the pandemic?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
and before that, even you started in a food truck.
I sure did.
You converted an old truck to a coffee truck.
That's right.
I've used the food
at the Napa Farmers Market, if I remember correctly. And so they didn't even have retail until just a few years ago.
Right.
Couple years ago.
Not retail like we have now. That's for sure.
Yeah. Here and in Sonoma.
That's right. Yeah.
So, you've had the roastery in Napa for.
The roastery will be 3 years old this summer, next couple months here. So I was basically doing the wine equivalent of the coffee equivalent of custom crush for wine. So I was renting time on other people's equipment, roasting my beans down in Oakland, Berkeley, et cetera, and then bringing everything back up here to sell it. Finally got to the point where it made sense to have my own facility so that every pound I roasted reduces my overheads opposed to the other way around where my overheads just keep going up as I grow.
Yeah. So what is it like being a business owner, right?
Well, I mean, it's like all things, you know, it's a mixed bag of like amazing rewards and unbelievable challenges as well.
Yeah.
I'd say, you know, one of the great things for me moving into retail space was that I was able to have a direct daily relationship with my customers.
Yeah.
One of the questions I would get the most at the farmer's market is, where can I get you on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday, the non-farmer's market days?
I just think with coffee shops though, right? It's such a sense of space and purpose.
Yep.
Right. And I've gone into your shop and you see people hang and gather.
It's very social.
Yeah. But I think we're going through a point in society that people want that. I think we're missing that, right? I think we went this in the tech space, information age, hiding behind keyboard, you know, your favorite website next door, John, right? There was no social contact or contract with how we interact. And coffee shops remind me of that image of just people sitting down and talking.
Yep.
And I think we need more of that. So I'm glad you have a retail space. I know sometimes the numbers are hard, but we do need that in Napa, right? And I'm glad you're here, right? I think it's going to, even with the foot traffic that's happening now and some of the, you know, with the general plans coming up, John, I know. I'm drinking the coffee for the general plan.
We have to drink anytime we talk about the general plan.
It's a question.
All right. Yes. But I think there's an opportunity to embrace a livable downtown where you have more people living, right? And that just means more of that residential traffic for businesses downtown.
Well, there's a vibrancy downtown Napa that has been a really exciting revitalization. We've been talking about it every time we go out on the porch and hear the sounds of development,
of construction and development. Yeah.
But so you're roasting locally now. You have retail, but I want to make sure that we cover the fact that you also have subscription and you have specialty partnerships with hotels and other folks where you have a variety. You have a variety of experiences beyond your retail spaces.
Yes, absolutely. So I mean, we're here in the heart of Napa Valley. People, I talk about gastrotourism. Like people are coming from all over the world to experience what the Napa Valley has to offer. We have more Michelin stars per capita here than just about anywhere. So as I was starting Ohm, I was looking all around. I was seeing the French Laundry and Screaming Eagle and all these amazing wine and food experiences, but not seeing any coffee at that level. So that was sort of one of the founding ideas here was elevating coffee to that level. And so we offer a lot of experiences that try to get people closer to coffee. We do tours and tastings at the roastery. We'll teach people how to cup coffee, which is like the coffee equivalent of a wine tasting. You're slurping coffee and getting messy, and it's so much fun.
I know Jerry's done that. I haven't done it yet, and I absolutely want to do it. It's awesome. So interesting because Jerry has an amazing palate, and she's able to really differentiate the blends.
She's got a great palate,
or the beans themselves. And
really,
I can get some of it, just like with wine. I get some of it, not all of it. And so it's really interesting. I can definitely tell differences in the different beans that we get at home. And I know part of it's the precision or lack thereof of my scooping of the amount of the ground beans. But also we, after your advice, have a good brewing system at home.
What do you have,
coffee
John?
maker at
what do
home.
You have?
Just
probably the high
one
end.
that I can manage, but
so it sounds like you're not cursing my name anymore when you make the coffee in the morning, because the initial price tag you're not so happy about
the coffee pods, that everybody gets just because of pure convenience, and then you have what I'll say real coffee, and it's so different, and it's so worth 5 to 10 minutes in the morning to really have that start, but that's why also. It's nice that you are able to present this to folks that are staying in our hotels. And also not just if you're at your retail, but we can all enjoy this at home.
Absolutely.
which is also an advantage. But if you can explain a little bit about how you have selected the sourcing around the world, and you roast every Monday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how is that how do you pick which ones you're doing when? I never know what's coming. Those 3 bags that we get every shipment, it's one of those Christmas morning reveals when,
what's going to be
when they show up. But just what is that process like for you?
Yeah, so the green beans unroasted are good for a year-ish in their preserved state. But once I roast, we're into just-in-time inventory. Really, I want to see those roasted beans get consumed within about 4 weeks of roasting. Wow. We are in a bunch of local retail stores around town. If I see a bag of beans that's more than a month old, I'll swap that out for something fresher. And the reason it's not so much that there's spoilage or anything dangerous, it's more just that the flavor potential that was there for the fresh bean just diminishes over time. It's sort of like leaving a glass of wine out on the counter overnight.
And you have a brand to protect.
That's right.
You have a level of quality to protect.
Yep. I'm charging a premium price. I'm sourcing from among some of the best beans in the world. Like, I've got to deliver that experience to my customers. And that was one of the biggest shifts for me coming out of wine. And when a winemaker puts wine into a bottle, put a cork in it, unless something really bad happens to that bottle, what comes out is going to be fairly close to what that winemaker had envisioned. For me, the last 20 feet of delivery is everything.
That is so interesting.
I could do so much to roast the perfect bean, but if it's not prepared properly, if the bag, was left out or is 6 months old, there's so much that can go wrong in that last little bit before.
So you said it was 4 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you manage that to make sure that there's or what happens if it's past 5 weeks?
Well, you don't roast them too soon.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're just having to manage that process pretty closely.
Yeah. So my wholesale accounts, so we're in places like the Andaz Hotel or Oakville Grocery. We supply all of their coffee, folks like that, where we kind of go in. And one of the biggest shifts as I started developing those accounts is, we're ordering weekly now. We're not ordering hundreds of pounds once a month.
Yeah.
So I give them, they get their 7 days plus a day or two of buffer, and then the fresh beans are coming in. So they're always in.
So you're managing inventory closely.
Yeah, I've had a few people at the local Whole Foods have said, "Oh, I see your beans there, but they're always so fresh." And I'm actually in there myself, making sure there's turnover happening and sizing the orders.
How are you rotating your bean sources from one shipment to the next?
So the sourcing, it's actually, there are different parts of the world where beans are ripening. Coffee is ripening at different times of the year. So I'm kind of sourcing year round. But my whole concept was around blends and not necessarily the equivalent would be, I'm not doing Beckstoff or Tokalan. I'm doing Penfolds Grange or Krug, where there's a house style, and what I'm sourcing from behind the scenes is super high quality, but you might not necessarily know the vineyards where it's coming from. For our subscribers, we try to rotate and keep things fresh. So John, you and Jerry are getting one shipment, you'll get a blend, and the next shipment, you'll get a single origin of one of the components going into one of those blends. What I try to do is source components of the blends that are good enough to stand on their own as single origins, but they're just going to, just like a Beckstoff or Tokalan, it's going to show all of the facets.
It's like a Merlot. You don't want to drink it, but you can't.
I love Merlot. He's a cab snob.
But so now that you got into it, when you got into the business, Eric, did you imagine going into retail, wholesale, and then distribution as you have, or did that just evolve as you got into it?
I definitely had all three. I think of it as a three-legged stool, because the wholesale is giving the volume that helps with the overheads. The subscription is giving that annuity business. The retail, is how you develop those daily relationships. At the time, though, I thought that the coffee truck could become more than ultimately I was able to make it into. We do a lot with the events business, farmers markets. There's an awesome role for the truck to play in the community. I think it's guerrilla coffee. We're bringing specialty coffee to all these unexpected, cool places.
I think people might know the truck more than they know the retail spaces, but that's good. That's changing brand, for sure. Well, and so I want to make sure we get transition into the music component also, partly because of Ohm and all the names of the different beans that you're making with Full Stack and the other Black Magic, all these names that relate to music and equipment. So that's another part of your life that you have many hats.
For sure.
So Mama Said, again, thank you for letting us use the needle as our theme music.
It's great.
Which is awesome. And it feels so natural now. We're, getting close to wrapping up season 3 and 60 plus episodes. And it really kind of has helped us with our identity, frankly.
Wow, that's awesome. I'd love to hear that.
And you just were so gracious, you and the whole band, to say, yes, we'll let these two knuckleheads use our music. And hopefully we've honored it correctly. But
absolutely,
you bring that part of your life and Jen's life into Mama Said. And so there is that bad pun coming, the blending of your coffee world with your music world. Tell us a little bit about that part of you and your life, which is Mama Said Band, and the fact that you've got another album that you're putting together now. What is that like? Because it's different than being a wine som and a coffee som, and you're also a rock and roller.
Right. Yeah, well, so I guess as I look back on my career and life, there's always been a little bit of that blending. I look at my parents. My dad was an entrepreneur. He started the American branch of a French lace company, sort of had business in his DNA. My mom was a professional musician. She's a singer and harpist. So I always grew up with music in the house.
Makes sense.
Tried a bunch of things before I landed on guitar. But the creative pursuits, so I think of coffee like my best day of the week with coffee is Monday when I get to roast and I get to kind of be creative with the beans and the roast profiles and all of that. And yet at the same time, I've got to run a business. So the entrepreneurial side of the brain needs to be working as well. But Mama Said is a great creative outlet. My wife, Jen, and I are the kind of front people of it at this point. There were 3 of us that founded the band, but always sort of felt the need to have a musical outlet. So I play lead guitar. My wife, Jen, is the lead singer in the band. And as Ohm was coming along, a lot of people think Ohm is the meditative yoga OM reference. It's actually
very different than that.
Very different. It's the Ohm's law of electrical resistance. So it's the amplified kind of geeky reference, but
dig that.
Yeah.
All of my blends are named after different styles of guitar amplifier. The idea being is that back to this thing with the snooty som, or the not trying to look down at people or intimidate them with knowledge. It's more about meeting them where they are. I don't want them to have to remember a single Finca coffee farm that there are only 50 bags that came into the US. They get it once and then it's gone forever. I've landed on the idea of naming all my blends after different styles of guitar amplifier, trying to capture the sonic profile in the flavor profile of the blend. That's a mouthful.
I dig that.
Yeah.
The example would be like the full stack blend. I have a Marshall full stack, think Jimi Hendrix, Cream, Spinal Tap, dials all to 11. The flavor profile is big and bold and in your face. And, it's like juicy and expressive and just dripping with character.
Literally this morning, that's what we had at home.
That was the home brew
Full
this
stack.
morning?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm not just saying that. It's real.
We'll find out. I'm going to call Jerry and find out.
She doesn't know I make it.
So each of the blends has their own character, and it was a way for me to kind of bring in the musical side with the with the business side as well. You can see there's a little waveform on our can, the flash brew. That's actually the waveform from the first song on our first album, Change in the Weather. So there's little tie-ins all over the place with it.
So let me ask you a question, because I think we're going to wrap up here. I'm asking for a friend. So is 3 cups of coffee too much in one day?
I mean, no.
Okay.
Who says too much?
How big are they?
John, it was just a question. It was a question I've answered.
Let's not pick it apart.
Yeah, John. This was fun, John. I learned so much about coffee, and I'm being honest.
I think you'll know it if you have too many cups of coffee.
No, because look, I can drink coffee, and I drink quite a bit, but I could have coffee like at 9 p.m. and go to bed by 10.
I think that's the key, is can you sleep at night?
Yes.
That'll change, by the way.
No,
I have firsthand knowledge about that.
I have 3 kids and stuff, and I'm just tired.
Couple decades from now, you'll have a different
We'll find
opinion. But I love the explanation and the kind of behind the scenes about
super cool
things that we take so for granted. We just pick up beans and brew them and drink and enjoy it. And it's like so much goes into it, and that you have that experience, and it's really fun to hear it.
My job is to nerd out. Your job is to enjoy it.
Yeah, right? But I think that's super cool because coffee doesn't get that benefit like wine, right? So to be able to talk about it and show how you have importers there's a scoring criteria that's universally accepted. I don't think people knew that.
Well, I also love the fact that if people are, pausing on their wine consumption or alcohol, some people are doing that. That's not us, but there's an alternative, and there's so much more of a parallel than I think people realize. The tradition is coffee in the morning, drink a couple cups or whatever it is, go to work, and you don't think of coffee anymore. But I know you and I have meetings throughout the day. It'll often be at Ohm and enjoying coffee in the afternoon. You can do iced coffee. You can coffee in the evening.
John, consumption should go up forever.
And
red wine.
That's true too.
And coffee.
But one thing I want to make sure people understand, your espresso bean is not something to be fearful of.
Right.
That I remember when I first saw it, I'm like, I got to watch out for the espresso. But
that's going to pack a punch, right?
It's like the others in terms of the intensity. I think maybe the nuance of caffeination levels. But
yes, a lot of people think an espresso roast is a darker roast or a more powerful coffee somehow. But really the only thing that makes an espresso blend that is lower acid in the blend. The reason being is that you're extracting under pressure. You're pulling a whole lot of stuff out in a 30-second shot. So caffeine, flavor, acid, everything else. If you were to have our Tweed blend that we make the flash brew with, tastes perfectly balanced as a pour over. It's way too acidic as an espresso shot. Mm-hmm. So I blend for lower acid in that hand-wired espresso. Our dark roast also happens to work well as espresso because when you roast darker, you're cooking off acid. That's why many espresso blends are dark roasts.
It's something for everybody any time of the day or night.
Cheers.
I'm going to toast with the coffee.
I already enjoyed it.
Cheers. Thanks for being with us.
Mix and match. Thank you guys.
Done.
So now that we've had our afternoon Ohm coffee, Alfredo, what do you think of our conversation with Derek?
Look, I was fascinated, John, to understand how coffee, the whole system and the parallels to winemaking. I thought that was cool. And again, I kind of was trying to double click when he talked about how they have a universally accepted criteria of what makes good coffee beans. I'm fantasizing, John, of why can't we have that in the grape growing business, right? Because it would actually help quite a bit.
It is interesting that you can get that kind of universal agreement globally about, and he talked about how it's the importer that he works with, and there is a trust there, but also it's one of those trust but verify, because he's also, making sure that the beans that he's getting are of that same quality. But you can absolutely tell the difference between the quality of his coffee beans and coffee from others.
In Napa, you could buy grapes for $10,000, but if you buy them from one region, it doesn't make them better than others, right? But there's no standard to it, right? And that's where I was really curious around how they're able to commit to that, stay in that competitive set, even as more money gets poured into coffee. They've been able to keep that discipline, which leads to good outcomes, right? Like when we try his coffee and have his coffee, it's fundamentally different than some of the corner coffee shops.
I find it really fascinating how he has progressed from, he could have stayed in hospitality and had, I'm sure, a very successful career.
True.
Because he was really on a serious track in that space. Then to transition to wine and being a sommelier in the wine world, could have stayed with that, and then found his calling with coffee when he had that, and he even said he had the aha moment of, that's how good coffee can be, and he's made that his passion now.
But didn't you find it interesting though, right? Like when Mario was in here, he talked about wanting to be an artist since a young kid, and how he went through that when he got pulled into a different school. He had that aha moment. And with Derek, when he talked about having a job in 11th grade in high school, it created a spark. And to me, I just hope that if there's any parents that are listening or young adults that it's okay to not know what you want to do. Sometimes you do something by accident and you find that spark, you find that purpose. I think we've seen that from different guests, John, and I think it's cool. And I'm actually proud that the podcast is bringing light to some of those stories.
I really love the backstory that people bring to it. Also, there's a real practical side of this. He's got, they started with a food truck and they still go to farmers markets here in Napa regularly on Tuesdays and Saturdays. That was really the beginning of the coffee business. And now they have 2 retail shops. They've got their own roasting factory here in Napa. And it's providing an alternative to folks that go to some of the big kind of chain coffee shops like you do, John. But you're going to change because now you've tasted what really high quality coffee does in fact taste like.
I'm just laughing because when I was doing town halls while we were in the elected office, I hired Derek in the coffee truck. And I always wondered why we got such a great turnout. I thought it was me. I disagree. It was a free coffee, but it was just damn coffee. It's good stuff. And now I'm piecing it together, John. I'm having this aha moment 5 years after.
Well, I'm sure a couple people, not just your wife, were there for you.
They came to bitch, John, about issues. So, all right.
Cheers.
Cheers to coffee and good wine.
And wine.